Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another session with LCSM5121. We have moved on to Learning Unit 4. We have deviated a little bit from our class pacer or our MO pacer, purely because I want to cover the content that's within your assignment first. Before we move on to continue the rest of the modules or the rest of the learning units. So today we are going to be doing Learning Unit 4, Theme 1. And on the 20th at 6 p.m. we will be doing Learning Unit 4, Theme 2. And that will basically conclude all of the content that's required when it comes to our Assignment 1, which is due on the 30th of August, if I'm not mistaken. So I hope everybody has been preparing for this, because it does seem like it's another week or so to go, or almost 2 weeks left to go. If you have any questions regarding the assignment, please shout, but I did cover quite a bit of it in our previous collab session, so not the recorded one, but our live session. So please listen to the recordings. If you still have any questions, please feel free to let me know or contact me via email, via WhatsApp, whatever means necessary that sits well with you. And I'm happy to answer. So just mind my date. I think I'm still sitting in 2023 for some reason. So today's session, from a Learning Unit 4 Theme 1 perspective, we are going to be focusing on quality management within the supply chain, sort of defining what is quality, the different components, the different dimensions, the 8 principles, and then TQM. And TQM is part of your assignment, so I wanted to cover that information as much as I possibly can, just so we have, or you have, an understanding of it, and you could use that from an application perspective. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so the first question is, what is quality management? And I think a lot of us ask ourselves that question, especially when we go through into the working world, you know, when there's different processes that's required, whether it's from a manufacturing perspective for actual product, or whether it's within the service industry. From both perspectives, there is quality management involved, as well as there's processes or different themes or gurus that we use to help us within the working world to improve on quality. So quality management basically is the process of overseeing all your activities as well as your tasks that is needed to maintain a level of excellence with a product, whether it's a service or even whether it's an organization that produces high quality outcomes. So even if you have to go through to a law firm, they offer a service, but it's what sort of high quality outcome do they want from that specific service that they are rendering to a customer. So quality, sort of the definitions of it is international standards organization. So a lot of you would have heard the terminology or the abbreviation of it called ISO. So ISO 8402, which basically you will see across this theme as well as theme 2, that we would be speaking on multiple ISO. So ISO 8402 being one, 9000, 9001, 9004, 14,000. So these are sort of the ISO accreditation. And in our next theme, I would fully explain what ISO is and sort of the benefit of it from an organization perspective. Deming, 1986, which we will go in more detail during the course of this session. But basically, it's a degree of uniformity which has dependability at a low cost to a market. Then we've got Duran and Godfrey, 2000, which is the fitness of the use of that specific product or the service. And then Crosby, 1979 and 1984, which is basically conformance to the requirements. So whether it's the product requirements or whether it's the customer requirements. So that basically is some of the definitions, or even some of the gurus, if you want to term it, that we use when it comes to quality management. Okay, so some of the components of quality. So although the sort of definitions of quality vary, the one that we use contains the most commonly accepted ideas in business today is basically user satisfaction, that the goods and the services that we have satisfy the needs and what the customer expects out of the product. So the first one is quality and product policy. So when you plan for a product, it involves various decisions about how we're going to produce the product and the service that the firm or the company is going to market. So the product or the service is a combination of both being tangible, meaning something that you can touch, or intangible characteristics that the company hopes that the customer will accept and also willing to pay the price that is dictated for that specific product. So product planning must be maintained where you have a specific market segment, you understand what the market segment needs to be served, and the level of performance that is expected of it, and also the price that is going to be charged. You must also understand what's your expected sales volume, and therefore the basic level of the quality of the product is specified by the management team. So all of these ideas and roles play a part in the actual production of the product. So based on the different characteristics of what is your market segment, how is the product going to be performed, what is the price that it needs to be charged, all of that then defines what the quality of the item is going to be or should be. Then we've got quality and product design. So the organization basically studies the entire marketplace, and they have a general specification or a general idea of the product, what is the expected performance of it, the appearance, what the price is, what the sales volume is going to be. Then the designers design the product or build the product to that quality level described in a general specification perspective. So what is the product capability? What is the requirements from a service perspective? And if they don't design it properly, the product will be unsuccessful in the market. Therefore, it may not be able to satisfy the needs and the expectations of your customer. Then you've got quality in manufacturing. So manufacturing is basically responsible for meeting the minimum specifications of the product design. So I don't know if you can see the trend. What is the policy? What is the product design by a product design team? And then we're going into manufacturing. So manufacturing is based on what the product design specifications are and are we meeting the minimum specification. It should be expressed in terms of what is the amount in terms of the variation of the product, in terms of the volume, what is the tolerance level, and the quality in the manufacturing means that at a minimum, all those products that must be produced, it must be within a specific limit, so you have less variation, so meaning not much changes. Therefore, you'll have better quality and better products. And then lastly, it's quality and the final use of the product. To the actual end user, the quality depends on what the expectation is of how well or what the product should perform or what's the expectation of that product. And then it's expressed as fitness for use. So customers don't always care about whether, why the product is defective, but they care that the product is actually defective. So when we go out and we purchase, let's say, for instance, a lawnmower from let's say a company or a brand called Husqvarna, when we are moving or using the actual product and something happens from a quality perspective, there is a defect on the product, we don't ask why did this happen. We immediately shout at the brand and say, you know what, this is defective. They don't care how, why, what, when, how. They just worry about the fact that it is a defective product at the end. So the customer may need some sort of introduction to how to use the product, what is the different features, especially if it's a new product range within a specific product market. An example of this is new cars that sort of turn off the headlight when an oncoming vehicle is coming through, then it's activated. The safety feature improves the visibility of the signal for your oncoming traffic or oncoming vehicle. However, some customers don't know what the design is of that specific feature. So they may have thought maybe there's a defect in the lighting. I remember when I first got my vehicle and it's got the exact same feature. When it happened, I was like, what is happening with the lights? It's because I didn't actually understand what the feature was. And slowly after still using the vehicle and understanding, wait, there's an oncoming vehicle that's coming through with light. And that's the reason why my lights have now dimmed. So it's understanding what the product is, understanding what the use of the product is and the benefit of it before we actually jump into any sort of conclusions. If the product is well conceived, it's well designed, it's well priced, well serviced, well explained, then the quality is most of the time satisfactory. If the product then exceeds the customer's expectation, then we know that it's that quality of first-class nature. So it's then just understanding the different scenarios of it. Okay, then we go on to the quality management principles. So I mentioned ISO in our first slide. So ISO is your International Standards Organization. So this specific organization developed certain principles which they use as a framework to guide certain businesses and organizations towards improving their specific performance and improving the quality. So ISO 9000, for instance, is a management standard that defines how a company conducts its business. It helps to understand its suppliers, its customers, to prevent any sort of non-conformity. So non-conformity is meaning not following the processes and the different procedures, like whether it's from a procurement side, a design side, or even a quality side. So some of the principles include customer focus, and this is depending on the customer, and it's necessary to understand what your customer needs are so that you can then exceed what they need or the expectation from their needs perspective. Leadership. Leaders should create a conducive working environment or even an internal working environment to understand what is the direction, what is the purpose, thereby supporting a good sort of working environment. Involvement or engagement of people. So all stakeholders within sort of a business or an organization should be part of achieving a final goal or a final purpose so that they're able to fully utilize what their abilities are so that the organization can benefit. We are all placed into a role because of our specific ability. So we need to be part of the goals or the strategy set out by the organization in order for us to feel accomplished, in order for us to feel fulfilled. Therefore, we as stakeholders within the business, we need to be now involved in maintaining what that policy or strategy is. Then we have a process approach. This basically recognizes that all the work that's done through different processes are managed accordingly. What is the result that you need? What is the different resources that's required, etc. So just understanding what the full process is within a sort of organization. Then we have a systems approach or to management. It's understanding the different interrelated processes in a specific system, which contributes the efficiency of your business and your effectiveness in achieving those strategies or goals set by the organization. Factual approach to decision making or evidence-based decision making, meaning it means acknowledging that decisions or good decisions are based on actual data and actual information. We're applying the principle of having factual approaches to decision making so that there's accuracy, there's reliability. People actually have a lot of trust when there's data and information that's used. So I know from a quality perspective, like if we have to go to a customer within my organization, and we are taking a shipment history or a shipment record of the entire month. We're going to them and we're saying, we are now 99% SLA. If I go to them and I just say that we're 99% within SLA, they're not going to believe it until I actually show them data and facts. So it's, how can we now show this in a PowerPoint presentation or a Power BI tab or on Excel or whatever tool helps you to show that data and information. It's factual, it's evidence-based, it's how can you now make the right decision based on the information that's provided to you. And then lastly, it's improvement or even continuous improvement. It should be viewed as a permanent organizational objective where improvement is possible. We are not in a space where any business organization is perfect. There's always a requirement to be continuously improving. Based on continuously improving, that's how you then become successful. It's sticking to market trends, understanding what the economy is, understanding what agile factors are in the market that's now contributing to you not being number one in that specific industry or market. So this basically sums up sort of quality management and the 8 principles, so that you have a holistic idea of what different principles fit in when we talk quality management, both internally and externally. Okay, then we move on to TQM. At the beginning of the session, I did mention that this is part of your assignment 1, which is due on the 30th of August. So it's understanding what TQM is and then understanding the different drivers that form TQM. So TQM is actually total quality management. And it's a way of managing an organization so that every job and the process is conducted correctly the first time. So you don't want to have recalls of any of the processes. You want to be able to do it right the first time. It is one of the approaches to managing quality that applies a systems approach where the philosophy of managing quality is adopted in all phases of the supply chain. So this specific process, it fits in every process of the supply chain, meaning from a procurement to production to operations to logistics to distribution to last mile to your actual customer. So how do we now make sure that quality is maintained in every step of the way and we are doing it right the first time? So some of the different drivers when it comes to TQM, and you'll see that when you do get into the job market, especially if it's within a supply chain structure or even if it's within a manufacturing industry, some of the processes or drivers are used. So the first one is JIT, which is called just in time. And JIT it emphasizes the concept of having 0 defects. So that you minimize quality and any sort of inspection costs that come into play. So the focus on having a 0 defect is defining quality based on the customer's perspective, and you are now improving the process through preventative measures so that you meet the requirements. So doing it right the first time, that's what JIT is, okay? It's a process that a lot of manufacturing companies actually do use, and it's something that will carry on, I think, for centuries after. The next one is Kaizen, so Japanese concept Kaizen, which is the culture of continuous improving or continuous improvement. And it calls for basically every stakeholder within the organization to have an improvement in every single process that they do. And it's small little marginal changes of improvement within your job process or your job scope so that you have a Kaizen approach. Global competition, so the competition for sales and profits from customers in both the private and the public sector has led to having great manufacturing and processing for organizations to have a competitive advantage. So you want to have as much global competition. So you learn from the best, basically. You pick up on different trends. You can then identify that and then use those concepts as part of your TQM in your organization by using focuses of global competitors so that you have access to world-class manufacturing, production, distributions, etc. And then the last one is quality philosophies. And this is basically developing world-class quality processes, which emphasizes the concept of doing things right the first time, and any sort of best practice benchmarking. So very similar to global competition, we want to be able to identify, let's say, for instance, it's a European company that's doing maybe on-the-job training whilst in a university setting. So an actual organization sits in the university, and then you have on-the-job training, so that, you know, when you are finished with your studies, you can, you know, have a learnership or anything else. It opens up the creation of jobs, as well as giving a student per se an opportunity to have that sort of experience. So it's understanding where the quality principle philosophies are sitting and how can you now benchmark based on that. All right. Then we move on to some of the gurus. So the first one is the Deming cycle. Okay, so the Deming cycle, I mean, there's a lot of points to basically remember from them, but it's improving quality that describes the sequence used to solve problems and improve your quality continuously over time. So the plan that's used when we talk about Deming cycle is your PDCA, which is a plan, do, check, and act philosophy. And it's also known as a quality assurance cycle. And it basically explains how businesses should be placed on a continuous loop or a feedback loop so that managers can identify and change the processes or parts of the processes that require any sort of improvement. So the P, so the plan, it's understanding and defining what's your objectives and your methods to achieve a specific goal, or identify a problem by studying what the current situation is, so that you have a gap analysis that is done, and you'll be able to have a desired future situation that is, you know, better for you to close that gap. So identify the problem by understanding what the current situation is. That is your plan. Your do is creating conditions for providing of service or training to achieve those objectives. So how do we now implement a plan to measure the performance based on the fact that we've identified a problem in the plan sector? Okay. Checking is deciding whether the work is progressing according to the plan that we've now set. What is the different key performance indexes or performance matrix that, you know, we can implement to monitor the results, and we can report this back to decision makers. And then act is to check that the work is being performed according to the plan, and then determine what is the appropriate action. And then basically we start the feedback loop all over again. We understand a new problem, and then we create a gap analysis, and then we try and achieve those objectives. We see if it's working and it's progressing, and determine any key performance indicators, and then we put an improvement plan in place. Okay, so that's basically the Deming cycle, or the PDCA, or what we call the quality assurance cycle. So PDCA, it's used in every industry. My industry as well, we use PDCA on any processes or policies where we see that we need improvement. So understand what a PDCA, because this is something that will help you. It's not like quantitative mathematics where you need to understand the theorem of Pythagorean and, you know, that sort of understanding. PDCA is something that you would use in a job setting and a job market. Crosby's. So Crosby's contribution to total quality management is 5 basic points. Okay, so the first one is obviously adopting the do it right the first time sort of attitude. The second one is prevention. So the system of quality is prevention. We need a process of control to make corrective changes when problems do exist. So how do we now prevent these problems from actually happening? zero defect. So similarly, how we spoke about our process of having zero defects. That's exactly what we're going to be looking at now. And then the measurement of quality is the price of non-conformance. So if you are not non-conforming and the quality of your product is not up to scratch, unfortunately, that is the price of non-conformance. And then the last one is there's no such thing as a quality problem. So if we are following the various methods of quality management, there shouldn't be a quality problem unless we are in a situation of a machine has broke down and. So we try and keep that as simple as possible. Okay, then we have Duran's, which is our quality trilogy. And our quality trilogy basically speaks on quality planning, quality control, quality improvement. So it's basically with planning, providing a system that is capable of meeting different standards, identifying the customer, determining the needs of the customer, and then translating those needs into a product. And then quality control is establishing what the measurements are, different KPIs, and what is the difference between the actual and the standard sort of quality. And then you take your necessary action. And then how do you now improve the quality? Is there a need for improvement? What projects can we now initiate so that we can improve a specific project? And what is the process? And what control methods can we now put into place? And then the last one is IMI's contribution to total quality management. And here we speak on Kaizen, which we have spoken about 2 slides before, which is your continuous process improvement. And the Kaizen steps is basically to understand what your operation is and try and keep that operation as standard as possible. So Kaizen is used a lot, and you'd see it if you have to YouTube Kaizen. A company like Toyota, for instance, it's continuously improving. How do you now have a standard operation? How do you now measure this operation? And how do you now innovate to make sure that you meet the different requirements and you increase your productivity? And then you now have a repeat cycle of improved operations. So that's what IMI's sort of contribution is to TQM. Okay, then we have the characteristics. And I think this is sort of the tail end of what our TQM characteristics are. And basically, it is a management philosophy that allows for the entire organization in the supply chain to be part of total quality management within an organization. So you want to include all participants, whether it's coming from sales, operations, procurement, finance, accounts, distribution, logistics. So everybody is now included within the TQM strategy within the organization. It has continuous improvement as a cornerstone philosophy. So Kaizen is used. Improvement should be seen as an everyday initiative. It's something that, like when you wake up in the morning and it takes you an hour to get ready. So an hour to shower, get dressed, apply your makeup, do your hair, have your breakfast before you now leave the house. So every day looking at your current process, how do you now strive to improve the process so that you can now get out the house a lot quicker because you are late to the office every single day. So how do you go from 60 minutes to 55 and 55 to 50 and 50 to 45? So understanding what that continuous improvement is. All employees in the organization or that are part of the supply chain have some quality project responsibility. So understanding who is responsible for what and how their ability affects the supply chain and affects the quality of improving a specific process or policy within the supply chain. Team problem solving on a sort of inter-organizational level or basis ensures that your quality goals are shared and that relationships are stabilized. So whatever your quality goals are, so every single department within the supply chain or avenue within the supply chain will have different quality goals. It's now putting it out there. This is the goals. Where are you now? How can I help you? Being from finance, how can I help you in sales? So it's understanding the different criteria from that perspective. And then the last one is feedback on customer service. So what is, from a quality perspective, the value of your product? It's an important part of the process. It's understanding what your customer expected and what they received, and what is that gap analysis from that perspective, and then how do you now start that feedback loop and go right from the beginning to understand that you need more quality in order for you to now meet the expectations of your customer. So that basically covers our theme 1 for our learning unit 4. Our next session, which is a live collab session, we're going to be going a little bit into standardization and specifications, as well as the different ISOs like 9000 and 14000. We're just going to go through some of the quality assurances, etc. And that should take us into quality or finish us off in quality. But I will see you guys on the 20th and we shall take it from there. Thank you.